Do you feel like your life is already mapped out and you know you will go through all steps your parents did? That's right there, the definition of a rite. In this video, we will be dealing with Arnold van Genep's work on rites called Rites of Passage, but first we will give you a bit of a background.
Arnold van Genep was born in 1873 and died in 1957. He was a Dutch, German, French ethnographer and folklorist. He is known for his works in rites of passage ceremonies with his book, Rites of Passage, published in 1909.
Van Genep goes through the main four rites of passage universally experienced by all civilizations, which are birth, puberty, marriage, and death.
But what is a rite? A rite is a social custom that can be either sacred or symbolic. There are three main types of rites. Rites of passage, which we'll be dealing with later on this video. Communal rites, which often refers to religious practices. They can be periodical religious habits, where a community comes together to worship, and can occur daily, weekly, or even annually. They can also be rites of demand, such as fertility rites or rain dances. Individual rites. If you take the religious tone to the term, it refers to the personal prayers. In a non-sacred world, everyday life can be codified with personal rites as well, such as shaving, putting makeup on, or putting the kids to bed.
Before we define rites of passage, let's explain a few terms you might be confused with. In all civilization, there are both a secular and a religious world, although the secular dominates more and more the sacred. Parts of our lives still remain within the sacred sphere, such as being born or getting married.
Let's picture this. A rite of passage celebrates and helps an individual leave a group to enter another. It helps the individual to be recognized as a new member of a group, leaving behind the other. A rite of passage accompanies any change from a stage to another, like a change of place, state, social position, and age.
To go from a group to another, an individual goes through three different stages. A preliminary stage, also called separation, a liminal stage called transition, and the postliminal stage referred to as incorporation. Preliminary rites consist of separating the individual from the society and from their former status. During the preliminary stage, the individual no longer belongs to the society as they lost their social identity. An example of preliminary rites could be a groom not allowed to see his bride before the wedding.
Liminal rites help to introduce the individual into their new group or their new identity. It is a transitional phase. To keep the image of marriage, the transition stage can be the time between the betrothal and the actual wedding. The status of the individual in a liminal state is purposely ambiguous. The individual loses their former identity and is yet to find a new one.
They are standing at a threshold that can be either material or immaterial.
Dr. Billy McLean further explained how society is losing any balance during a liminal stage.
This liminal phase where they're acting outside of the normal rules of society. People act in a rude way, in drunkenness or licentious behavior is permitted in this context because they're, withdrawing themselves from the rules of regular society, and people act like they wouldn't normally act, and it's socially acceptable for them to do this to a certain extent because people understand that this is a ritual that has a beginning and an end. You transform within it, and then you reintegrate it into society again.
Postliminal rites help the incorporation of the person into their new status. The individual is reincorporated in the society with a brand new social status. We can observe concrete rites of passage in our daily life without even realizing it.
An example might help you understand. Take the 1st of November in the modern calendar, also called the Festival of Sowing. This agricultural festival represents the end of the harvest season and the beginning of the winter, also called the darker half of the year. The night between the 31st of October and the 1st of November is seen as a liminal time, when the boundary between our world and the other world could be crossed more easily and the spirits could easily come into our world. For some people, Samhain is where Halloween found its origins.
Today, children stand at the thresholds when they go trick-or-treating. Unconsciously, children wait at the threshold, this liminal space, and expect people to give them treats. It would never occur to them to just show up at someone's door and ask for candy on any other day. But during this liminal time, boundaries are lifted and social order disappears. Ultimately, liminal stages are present in our lives more than we can realize. When you knock on your neighbor's door, waiting for him to invite you inside. New Year's Eve, going from a year to a new one. Getting on an airplane, coming to Limerick for your Erasmus year abroad.
So it was our video project about Rites of Passage. We want to do something original, so we decided to draw on a whiteboard for our video, even if we
Can't draw.
Yeah.
That's an inspiration from ASAP Science.
At first we didn't know what was Rites of Passage, and we learned that it was something that we do in everyday life.
Without realizing it.
Yeah. We have to thank Billy Macklin for his interview that
Yeah,
he
and
did
his help.
for us.
He helped us understand better what we had trouble understanding ourselves. We had trouble finding rooms to film the drawing part because we didn't have whiteboard, and there was a lot of unexpected things we had to think about, like lighting and being on shot and drawing, like not being in the shot.
Yeah.
So we thought it was an interesting way of being marked because we did a lot of research, and it's quite difficult for us to write things because English is not our first language. So, and I found it easier to speak than to write.